Picture this, a packed auditorium, thousands of voices rising as one, and then he walks on stage. The crowd erupts. Grown men are crying. Why? Because the songs this man wrote became the soundtrack to their most sacred moments, their weddings, their funerals, their darkest nights, and their brightest mornings. What you're about to witness isn't just a concert recap. This is the story of how one songwriter from a tiny Kentucky town changed gospel music forever, and almost lost everything in the process. I'm taking you inside the National Quartet Convention, where something extraordinary happened. But before we get to that unforgettable moment, and trust me, you'll want to stay until the end for this, let me show you why this night mattered so much. In the next 25 minutes, you'll discover the 3 songwriting secrets that made Kirk Talley's music unforgettable. Why gospel artists say his influence shaped an entire generation. The personal struggle he revealed on stage that night that brought the house down. And the one performance that had everyone, performers and audience alike, in tears. But here's what you need to understand first. The National Quartet Convention isn't just another music festival. Since 1957, it's been the pilgrimage for Southern gospel fans. Think of it as the Super Bowl, the Oscars, and a family reunion all rolled into one. This isn't a casual event where people show up once and maybe return if they're in the area. No, this is something entirely different. Imagine attending the same event for 20, 30, even 40 years straight. You've watched young artists become legends. You've seen those legends age. Some pass away, their voices becoming memories. You've witnessed the birth of new songs that would become standards. And you've sung along to those same songs year after year until they became woven into the fabric of your own life story. Every September, these faithful fans make their way to Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. They come from small towns across the South, from big cities up north, from farms and suburbs, and everywhere in between. They pack their bags, book their hotels months in advance, and make the journey not just for the music. Though the music is extraordinary, they come because these are their people. This is their tribe. In a world that often feels fractured and divided, the NQC represents something increasingly rare, a place where everyone shares the same language, the same values, the same love for a particular kind of music that speaks directly to the soul. Now, 2024 was different from all the other conventions. This wasn't just another year of performances and workshops and merchandise tables. This was a tribute night, a celebration of one man's catalog of songs that had literally shaped the genre for more than 3 decades. The convention organizers knew they needed to do something special, something that would honor not just the music, but the man behind it and the countless lives those songs had touched. Kirk Talley. If you don't know the name, you definitely know the songs. Born in Harlan, Kentucky, deep in coal country, where the mountains rise steep and the communities are tight-knit, and faith is as essential as breathing, Talley grew up in circumstances that would shape everything about his music. His childhood was spent in a tiny church, the kind with worn wooden pews and a piano that was slightly out of tune, where the only entertainment on Sunday mornings and Wednesday nights was the singing. There were no fancy instruments, no professional sound systems, no light shows or projection screens, just voices raised in harmony and faith expressed through melody. In those formative years, young Kirk learned something that would become the foundation of his entire career. Music wasn't about production value or technical perfection. It was about authenticity, about meaning, about connecting the human heart to something greater than itself. He watched elderly women sing with their eyes closed, completely lost in worship. He saw strong men who worked dangerous jobs in the coal mines break down during particularly moving hymns. He absorbed the way certain songs could transform the atmosphere in a room, could take people from wherever they were emotionally and lift them to a place of hope and peace. For many attendees, gospel music isn't background noise. It's the anchor that held them steady through divorce, disease, and death. It's the voice that sang to them when they couldn't pray. Remember that detail, because it explains the tears, the raised hands, the voices singing so loud the walls seemed to shake during the tribute. Here's what separated Talley from other songwriters, and this is crucial to understanding why his music has endured when so many contemporary gospel songs fade into obscurity after a few years. He wrote from the pew, not from the stage. What does that mean exactly? Most songwriters in the gospel world perform first, then write. They're up on stage, they see what gets crowd reactions, they understand the technical aspects of music theory and arrangement, and they craft songs accordingly. There's nothing wrong with that approach, and it produces some excellent music. But Talley's process was fundamentally different. He lived first. He struggled. He questioned. He wrestled with doubt and fear and pain. And then, only after walking through those valleys, he wrote. His songs came from the trenches of real life, not from a desire to create a radio hit or win an award. When he wrote about grace, it was because he desperately needed grace himself. When he wrote about redemption, it was because he understood what it meant to need redeeming. When he penned lyrics about God's love being unfailing, it was because he had tested that love in his darkest moments and found it to be true. This authenticity became his signature. Listeners could sense it immediately. You can't fake that kind of honesty. You can't manufacture genuine emotion, and in a genre that sometimes gets criticized for being too polished, too perfect, too removed from real struggle. Talley's raw honesty was like fresh water in a desert. People were thirsty for music that acknowledged that faith didn't mean the absence of problems. They needed songs that gave them permission to hurt while still believing, to question while still trusting, to struggle while still holding on. Over 3 decades, Talley wrote hit after hit. The Love of God became a wedding staple. I Just Came to Praise the Lord became a church anthem. Who Am I became the song people played when they needed to remember their worth. But these weren't just successful songs. They became part of people's lives in ways that transcended typical music consumption. His songs were present at funerals, giving voice to grief and hope. They were sung in hospital rooms and rehabilitation centers, reminding people they weren't alone. When analyzing Talley's biggest hits, 3 patterns emerge. The first is the question format. Take Who Am I as the prime example. Notice how it starts with a question, not a statement. This is psychological genius. When you ask listeners a question, their brains literally can't help but engage. You've activated their participation before the first verse even ends. A statement can be received passively, but a question demands involvement. The second pattern is the personal to universal journey. His songs start intimate. I just came to praise the Lord. First person, singular, personal. But by the chorus, it's we, it's us. The individual experience expands into communal. This mirrors the actual experience of faith, which begins personally but connects you to community. That's why these songs work equally well alone, in your car at 2 a.m., or in a stadium with thousands. The third pattern is the redemption arc. Every Kirk Talley song contains a journey: struggle, surrender, transformation. The song acknowledges difficulty without pretending everything is fine. Then comes surrender, the turning point. Finally, transformation. The song ends differently than it began. This is the same structure that makes movies powerful. The human brain is hardwired to respond to transformation narratives. During the tribute, several artists took the stage to testify about how Talley's music influenced their careers. One well-known gospel artist shared something vulnerable. He said, "I was ready to quit music. I was broke. My record label dropped me, and I was packing up my equipment to sell it. Then, Kirk's music came on the radio, singing about redemption. I broke down and realized my story wasn't over. I wrote my next album in 3 weeks. That album changed everything for me." The NQC organizers had collected video testimonies from fans. An elderly woman spoke about how The Love of God had been her late husband's favorite song for 47 years. After he passed from cancer, she couldn't listen to it for 2 years. Eventually, she realized avoiding the song was like avoiding her memories of him. Now she plays it regularly and feels connected to both her husband and her faith. A middle-aged man shared how he'd been an alcoholic for 20 years, losing his family and job. In a faith-based rehab program, someone sang, "Who Am I?" The lyrics about unworthiness, meeting unconditional love, hit him powerfully. That song became his anchor during recovery. He's been sober for 8 years now, reunited with his children. When the celebration began, the atmosphere was electric. The lights dimmed and the opening notes of "The Love of God" began. This song is foundational, the one countless people point to as making divine love real to them. As the vocalist sang, something remarkable happened. Watch the videos from that night, and you'll see people mouthing every word with their eyes closed, completely absorbed. Some swaying, others standing still with tears streaming down. Neuroscience explains this. When we hear music tied to powerful memories, our brains release the same chemicals we felt during the original experience. These people weren't just remembering their wedding or their mother's funeral. They were reliving those moments. The joy, the grief, the awe came flooding back. Performance after performance followed, each artist bringing their own interpretation while honoring the original. They weren't replicating note for note. They were asking what the song meant to them personally. Some arrangements were traditional, others surprisingly innovative. There's a lesson here for any creative. The best tributes don't copy. They remix. They honor the source while bringing something new. Then came the performance of "I Just Came to Praise the Lord." The entire auditorium joined in, not as background singers, but as the choir. Thousands of voices created this overwhelming wall of sound. Psychology research shows that singing together actually synchronizes heartbeats. This isn't metaphor, it's measurable biology. In that moment, thousands of hearts were literally beating as one. And then, without announcement, Kirk Talley himself walked onto that stage. The roar was deafening. People jumped to their feet, some shouting, others frozen in stunned silence. But here's what made this night transcendent. Talley didn't perform. He talked, and what he shared broke and healed hearts simultaneously. He spoke about his struggles, the public battles, the private demons, the times he wanted to quit, not just music but life itself. The crowd fell completely silent. Then Talley said something unforgettable. "These songs that you've been singing tonight, I need you to understand something. They weren't written for you. They were written to me from God, so I could survive. You just happened to need them too." Think about that. The songs that ministered to millions were first medicine for the songwriter himself. When he wrote, "Who am I?" he genuinely didn't know the answer. He was wrestling with his own unworthiness. The song wasn't resolved theology, it was a desperate question. This is the paradox of art. We create to heal ourselves, and somehow it heals others too. The personal becomes universal, not by trying to be universal, but by being unflinchingly personal. Talley didn't sugarcoat his journey. He acknowledged valleys, failures, moments when the next step seemed impossible. Then he said something profound. The same faith that saves you also sustains you. Not by removing the struggle, but by remaining present in the struggle. So much religious teaching promises faith will remove problems. But real faith doesn't eliminate difficulty, it provides companionship through difficulty. It doesn't answer every question, but holds your hand while you sit with them. That message resonated powerfully. Finally, someone was saying what people had experienced but feared expressing. Finally, a respected voice was admitting, the Christian life is hard, that doubt and struggle are part of the journey, not signs of failure. What makes Kirk Talley's music endure when so many songs fade into obscurity? After studying this celebration, witnessing the responses, hearing the testimonies, and analyzing the patterns, it comes down to 3 essential elements. First, emotional honesty. Talley never pretended faith was simple or that doubt was weakness. His songs give permission to struggle. They acknowledge that believing doesn't mean you never question, that trusting doesn't mean you never fear, that having faith doesn't mean you never feel abandoned. This honesty makes his music trustworthy. People return to it because it doesn't lie to them. Second, melodic memory. The melodies Talley crafted are unforgettable in the best way. You can't not remember them once you've heard them. They're simple enough that anyone can sing along, even without musical training, but complex enough to remain interesting even after hundreds of repetitions. This is incredibly difficult to achieve. Many simple melodies become boring. Many complex melodies become inaccessible. Talley found the sweet spot where simplicity and sophistication meet. Third, universal specificity. This might seem like a contradiction, but it's the key to understanding why his lyrics work so well. His songs are specific enough to feel personal and genuine, rooted in particular experiences and emotions, but they're framed in ways that apply universally. Who am I? Is a specific question arising from a specific moment, but it's also the question every human being asks at some point. This combination of the specific and universal makes the songs feel both intimate and expansive. The influence on future generations was evident throughout the NQC celebration. Young artists in their 20s and 30s were singing these songs with the same passion and conviction as the 70-year-olds who first heard them when they were released decades ago. This intergenerational appeal is rare and precious. Usually, musical tastes divide generations. Parents and children argue about what's worth listening to, but Talley's music bridges those gaps. Grandparents, parents, and grandchildren can all find meaning in the same songs. This is the definition of legacy. When your work transcends your own generation and speaks to the next and the next after that, you've created something that will outlive you. Talley's music is doing that now. His songs are being covered by young artists, reimagined in new arrangements, introduced to audiences who weren't even born when the songs were first written. And those new listeners are connecting with them just as deeply as the original audiences did. The specific circumstances change, but the human emotions and spiritual needs those songs address remain constant. The broader impact on gospel music became a topic of discussion among the artists and industry professionals at the convention. Talley's approach to songwriting, his willingness to be vulnerable, his focus on authenticity over commercial appeal, these things influenced an entire generation of gospel musicians. They learned from his example that you don't have to choose between artistic integrity and popular success, that in fact, the most commercially successful gospel music is often the most honest and uncompromising. The 2024 celebration wasn't just about one songwriter, as significant as he is. It was a statement about the enduring relevance of Southern gospel music itself. In an era when traditional genres struggle to maintain audiences, when attention spans shrink and musical trends change rapidly, the packed auditorium full of people of all ages was proof that authentic artistry still matters. That music rooted in genuine faith and human experience still connects. So, here's what I want you to understand as we bring this all together. The National Quartet Convention 2024 tribute to Kirk Talley wasn't just a concert or a ceremony. It was a masterclass in the power of authentic artistry. It demonstrated what happens when someone creates from truth rather than trends, when they write for healing rather than applause, when they value honesty over polish. Remember how we started, asking why grown men were crying? Now you know. Because Talley's songs were there in their darkest moments. His words gave them language for pain they couldn't express on their own. His melodies carried them when they couldn't stand under their own strength. His honest wrestling with faith gave them permission to wrestle too, without feeling like failures. His testimony of God's sustaining presence in struggle gave them hope that they could make it through their own valleys. Whether you're a songwriter, a creative in any field, or someone just trying to make it through another difficult day, there's wisdom in Kirk Talley's story. Create from truth, not from calculation about what will be popular. Write for healing, your own first, and then others. Remember that your struggle, your honest questions, your vulnerability might be exactly what someone else needs to hear, so they don't feel so alone. Don't polish away all the rough edges in pursuit of perfection. Sometimes the rough edges are where the realness lives. Kirk Talley's legacy isn't ultimately in the impressive number of songs he wrote, or the awards he won, or the albums he sold. Those things matter and reflect the quality and reach of his work, but they're not the core of his legacy. His legacy is in every person who felt less alone because of his music. Every individual who found courage to face another day because his songs reminded them they were loved and valued. Every struggling soul who heard his honest questions and realized their own questions were okay. That's not just music. That's ministry. That's art at its highest and most sacred form. The videos from that night are still circulating on social media platforms. The testimonies are still being shared in comments and messages. People who couldn't attend in person are watching the footage and experiencing their own emotional responses. And somewhere right now, at this very moment, someone is discovering Kirk Talley's music for the first time. They're going through something difficult. They feel isolated in their pain. They wonder if anyone understands. And then they hear one of his songs, and something shifts. They realize they're not alone. They find language for what they're feeling. They receive hope that maybe, just maybe, they can make it through this.